why we want to avoid excessive advanced techniques in a trick or routine. And we're going to use our example will be, let me see, Generation Extreme by Brian Tudor as a poster child example. Now, Bob Dorian himself, and I wrote down, Bob Dorian himself stated that difficult techniques just for the purpose of doing them, including them in your Magic Castle act and no other reason, and they're pretty unnecessary. I'm paraphrasing for obvious reasons, but he termed it baitings of the master techniques. Yeah, baitings of the master techniques. That is what he termed it. And so, Brian Tudor, if you haven't watched his stuff, type in, if you want to have fun, you could pause this thing and go type in Generation Extreme by Brian Tudor. Don't worry, I'll wait. And there'll be it's EX, not X, so Extreme. So Generation Extreme by Brian Tudor. And you'll eventually see a product listing by Penguin Magic. And you'd be surprised that Penguin Magic, first listed it because they're more about easy techniques, about getting you started and doing all those things. They're more involvement friendly. They have the product in stock, and it says a warning on there, their disclaimer in red writing. And I'm going to read it off exactly as follows. I copy pasted it. It says, DVD warning. This is a Brian Tudor DVD warning. Don't buy this DVD. Almost no one can actually do the stuff you're about to see. It's aggressive, showy, complex, impossibly fast, and freakish. Once you master it, your spectators may only notice 1/10 of what they're supposed to see, and only 1/100th of what is actually happening. That's no way to live. Pick up a Svengali deck and be happy. That is literally, word for word, what they wrote in the advertisement, and then they listed it. They should have at least put a little saying disclaimer. They didn't even put a disclaimer. They just put in red writing and say, don't buy it. And there's people buying it, and then they start complaining in the reviews. I'm like, what do you expect? And that disclaimer's been on there since the beginning. So I don't want to hear anything from people saying, well, they didn't put the disclaimer until after. No, they put that there, and they bought it willingly, and then they trashed the DVD, which is... what do you say when someone does something bad, and they disclaim it's bad, and they do it, and then they complain it's bad? I don't have words for that level of... Idiots, stupidity. There are questionable magicians of this world. I will just say that. And I mean, some of Brian Tudor's material is actually quite decent if he actually slowed it down and let people appreciate it. I'm not kidding. Some of the stuff is actually good, but if he slowed it down and actually made it impressionable, like from what I read in the reviews, it was literally... I'm doing a rant right now. I can't believe this. I'm doing on Brian. He has to deal with this. Like in the reviews, it was like... What was it? Like some of the techniques were really difficult, or they... Just the point is, we don't want to be that. We want to... The whole essence of Magic is to remove techniques. They say buy magic is the expressionable term. So when you see a card change from one card to, let's say, another, and there was like no move to it, and it just magically changed, that'd be amazing. That's amazing that nothing happened, there was no moves, and it just changed by magic. And we want to try to remove the moves, so like from the audience view, or maybe misdirect occasionally where it's appropriate, to be able to give a full impression that it just happens, it's a free-flowing performance, and there's nothing to see. There's no moves. It's just you, the spectator, a moment, and a medium or tool which it happens in, and everything happens in the minds and the way we perceive it. Because the way the audience perceives it is different from the way a performer perceives it. But hopefully the magician would want to perceive it the same way. Like in thought ideology and what they're trying to communicate. So it's the idea of trying to go for simpler occasionally where you can, strive for simplicity if the method allows or whatever, so you can get ultimately a happy effect. You don't want to do risky Dan and Dave material or or things where it can fail, like a bad snap change, or it's a one-handed snap change, where it fails and risky looked at it on your audience. You would want something more reliable or something less difficult, so they don't see anything and they get more better impression magic. So instead of that, maybe like a wonderful twirl change, which I believe I covered in another video. I'm not sure. If I didn't, I'll cover in a future video. But we want to encourage just a smooth piece where it seems like there's nothing. Ultimately, when I have been striving for this in my performances, but there was an individual at the end of my show who stated, and this happens a lot in my shows, I borrow a pack, it doesn't matter, or I use my own pack, and they say those cards are rigged, let me look at them. And they just stare at them because they couldn't believe what happened offhandedly. That I just borrowed a pack, they shuffled it up, and I did the whole thing. They're so impressed that there was no moves, nothing they could see, that they had to find something in there. There had to be something. And then as always is my nature, I give away the cards at the end. If they are really that magical as you perceive them, then have them. It's a John Bannon style that I've adopted. And I give full credit to John Bannon in his book, Dear Mr. Fantasy, because it's a wonderful, wonderful idea. So in that regard, I say that simplicity and strive for simplicity and streamlining effects and making them more wonderful. Taking a effect from 1970s and inundating it with a fresh approach and keeping all the same value and all the same mystery is a wonderful thing. So avoid the baiter of the master techniques, as Bob Dorian would casually say to impressionable 13-year-olds. Paraphrasing.